सच्चित् सुखवारिराशेर् यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि। With prostrations at the feet of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, I wish to share with you this evening a few thoughts on an outline of self-inquiry. Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi made the question, "Who am I?" very popular, gave tremendous importance to the question that one could ask oneself, "Who am I?" That spiritual practice, if you may call it a practice, with "Who am I" as the very center of it, is called self-inquiry, Atma Vichara. I do see that the majority here are somewhat familiar, some very familiar, with the life and teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi, but there are a handful of newcomers here. For their benefit, very briefly, let me say, first of all, spirituality is not a separate compartment of human life. Really, from childhood till one's death, spirituality is relevant. Wherever there is a certain excellence in terms of human values, that is spirituality. Wherever a small boy or girl, middle-aged person, or an old man or an old woman behaves in ways where others feel that there is so less of selfishness, there is so much of seeing the other person as oneself, that is spirituality. One of the hallmarks of spirituality is absence of narrow, selfish outlooks. Therefore, to think of spirituality in a sequential manner, that for a certain number of years one must earn and establish oneself materially, and then at some point of time turn towards God or truth, is ignorance. If most people do so, that is a different issue, because let us admit, in the life of most people, till they are 30 or 40, sometimes 50 or 60, their eyes do not open to the truth of spirituality. So in their belief, spirituality is something irrelevant, but that is their problem. Those who know what spirituality, Adhyatma Vidya, is, have no doubt that this Adhyatma Vidya is relevant from the womb to the tomb, from the birth, the cradle, as they say, till the grave. For, broadly speaking, at any point in time in our life, we could be in ignorance, avidya, which makes us always insecure, always think of I, me and my, always get afraid. I may not get what I want and she may take it or he may take it. Always concerned with building some kind of empire of oneself. That is what happens when we are in the grip of avidya, and that indeed is bondage. Or we could be in the domain of vidya, that is wisdom, that is pure knowledge, where like anybody else. This person who is in the domain of Vidya also eats, drinks, sleeps, may marry, may not marry, may have children, may not have children. Those are totally different. But even as he or she is engaged in countless aspects of normal human life, thanks to the Vidya, thanks to the spiritual outlook, thanks to the profound spiritual wisdom, this person would be in fact enjoying love in his heart or her heart, peace. This person who is in Vidya will be right away enjoying this creation, and let us not go too much into the details. The person who is blessed with Vidya, with Adhyatma Vidya, is free right away. The person who is in avidya, even if he or she has crores of rupees, is not free. Always worried, jealous, regretting, or anxious, and so on. The person of Vidya is free and happy without anything really. So, this choice between avidya and Vidya, ignorance and pure wisdom, comes to us. Though I called it choice, I don't mean at any moment we can just pick it like doing some shopping in some mall. Really, it is divine grace, it is maybe 2 cents of our effort and 98 cents of God's grace, that one rare soul among us, and that one rare soul could be anybody among us, not the one who knows more philosophy, or not the one who knows more Sanskrit, or not the one who can write articles, or nothing to do with that. Don't imagine that those factors are important. Somebody here who has come for the first time to this kind of lecture may stand a better chance of taking that quantum leap. And some of us, including the speaker, who have been into this so-called sadhana, for years and years and decades even, may miss the boat narrowly. So please do not get swayed or give too much importance to those side factors. Essentially, when that vidya, that right insight, that liberating insight takes place, the person is totally different. Free here and now. In that sense, friends, this Adhyatma Vidya, spiritual wisdom, is the greatest knowledge and it is the greatest mystery. It is, in fact, the highest mysticism also. What I mean is, more than being able to walk on water or walk in the air, more than being able to read somebody else's mind, more than doing some other spectacular superhuman feats, actually, if any of us can let go of our self-created fears, that is the greatest blessing that we ourselves may have, that is the greatest gift we may give to others too. Someone who has no fear, someone who has no worries, does the best possible at any given moment of time. And of course, let us be very clear, being free from fear and worry doesn't mean one is lazy then, nor lazy also, not afraid, not worrying, not lazy too. It is indescribable. In fact, in Saddarshanam, on which I am going to say a few words later, Maharshi himself says about a person who is free inwardly. He says, Tasya sthitim bhavayitum kshamakkaha. There is a punchline at the end of a shloka. Tasya sthitim bhavayitum kshamakkaha. Who indeed is ever capable to understand the state of a free person. Tasya jivan muktasya sthitim, his inner state of consciousness. It is always a big question. Arjuna had asked Sri Krishna, that question, Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha, you know, samadhistasya keshava, Sthita dhihi kim prabhasheta, kim asita, vrajeta kim. Arjuna's question to Krishna, an enlightened person, about him, please tell us, how does he walk, how does he sit, how does he move, how does... Everything is a puzzle. So, we are talking of that inner freedom. We are talking of living in love and freedom, in compassion and a certain inner expanse of consciousness. Other things do not matter, poor or rich, famous or not famous, very learned or gone up to only fourth standard. Those things are, immaterial. Those things are just a side show. Talking about Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, he has been a great blessing to a lot of us who especially have read some books, let us say, but we never would imagine a living example. In recent times, that is 20th and 21st century, Maharshi Ramana stands out as one of the most illustrious examples of a testimony to what the Upanishads spoke, that death of ego, that while keeping the body being free from ignorance, that vision of others and oneself not being separate, that vision of oneness, vision of Advaita. On top of it, the greatest and most beautiful instances of compassion, simplicity. Nrinam nidarshanamayam Bhagavan Rishihi, says Vasishta Ganapati Muni. This Maharshi is a nidarshanam, means an example for all human beings, Nrinam. So, both in his way of conducting his own life and in solving the doubts of people and in throwing light on very profound aspects of this Adhyatma Vidya, Maharshi Ramana stood out during those years in Tiruvannamalai, having had a very out-of-the-way experience which later came to be known as the death experience at the age of 17, where on the upstairs room of his uncle's house in Madurai, he was seized with the fear of dying, and contrary to anybody else's response, where one would rush downstairs or cry out for help or some such thing, this young boy, Venkatraman, said, "Let me see what it is to die." And he, rather than running away, escaping, says, "Let me cooperate with death." He lies down flat and says, "Okay, let me die." And sure enough, his body became cold, breathing stopped, blood circulation stopped, and in clinical terms he died. But lo, even as his body was quiet and mind was also quiet, he was able to see. How he saw is another mystery, not with eyes, not with ordinary usual mentation, that is working of the mind, but in some inexplicable manner he saw the body has died, the mind is still, but I am. I still am. And after a while on his part there was no volition, there was no way on his part to activate himself. By divine will only, we must say, the body came back to movement and the boy got up. This death experience dramatically changed the life of Venkatraman, and before long, within a couple of months or so, he left Madurai, went to Tiruvannamalai, and from the age of 17, till the age of 71, for 54 years, he stayed in Tiruvannamalai, either on the slope of the hill or at this point at the bottom of the hill or at that point at the bottom of the hill, somewhere around and in Tiruvannamalai. For many years he kept quiet, he was still. So they used to call him Mauni Swami, or they used to call him Brahmana Swami. He was silent, and the story is very inspiring and has many more details, but let me cut short, for we need to go into some of his major teachings. He was eventually, after quite a long time, he was eventually recognized as a completely free human being, Jivan Mukta. And many scholars like Vasishta Ganapati Muni, Muruganar, and many others, some Jagadisha Shastri, and so many of them came. Then visitors started pouring in from even countries abroad, and he left behind an unbelievably great legacy. Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, day by day with Bhagavan, or Surinagamma's letters from the ashram, and so many. Any one of them would be enough for us to really get a great clarity about this confusion otherwise called life. All of us are these days with smartphone in hand and with all kinds of things we do. We put up an impressive show outside, but inside we don't have answers to fundamental questions. We have answers to who is leading in UP and what is happening in Washington DC. But if somebody asks, okay, let us put that aside, tell me, why are you here on the earth? We have no answer. We say, any other question you have? We change. But life is like that. Life is a great mystery. So, here we have Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi's life and teachings to inspire us. We have a certain clarity on what this spirituality is all about. Let me now introduce to you the beautiful text among the many texts that he had blessed us with. Originally this was Ulladu Napatu. In Tamil it means, Napatu means 40, Chalis, and Ulladu is what really is. What really is, that is reality. So 40 verses on reality, that was the work, and Sri Ganapati Muni, who was a great scholar of Sanskrit, who knew Telugu and Tamil and some Kannada, etc., he made a Sanskrit version of Ulladu Napatu, and that came to be known as Sad Darshanam. Sad is reality, Darshanam is vision. So vision of the reality, vision of truth. And that set of 40 verses, with 2 verses of invocation which were added, and then 2 verses at the end saying something about that work, that this work is the great revelation of Sri Maharshi. He is like the beam of light, and I, Ganapati Muni, am just like a reflecting surface. The light belongs to Maharshi, I am just reflecting it. That's what the 43rd verse says. And the 44th verse says, this was originally composed in Dravida Vak, that is Tamil, and Amartyavani in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is considered the language of gods. Amartyavani. Dravida Vang Nibaddham Amartyavanyam Anudya Vasishta Munir Vyatanit. There is a line in the last verse. In other words, 2 verses were added at the end. So 2 invocation verses, 2 verses of afterword make the whole Sanskrit composition run into 44 verses. Let's take a few verses as samples and get a glimpse of the nature of the teachings here. First of all, the 2 invocation verses have, that is not the part of the original one. They pay respect to the supreme truth, which is called Sat, and then they praise Lord Shiva. But even while praising Lord Shiva, calling him Mrityunjaya, there is a teaching through that praise. If one were to surrender to Mrityunjaya, the conqueror of death, Shiva, First of all, with a touch of humor, the verse says, your fear of death makes you surrender to Shiva, save me from dying, and your ego dies. The ego of the person who prays to the Lord of death dies first. And when the ego dies, the fear of death also dies. Let the fear of death die. Then you won't have the problem becomes a non-problem. Mrityunjayam mrityubhyashritanam aham matir mrityumupaiti purvam atasvabhavad amriteshu teshu katham punar mrityu dhiyo vakashaha is the second prarthana shloka. Where is then any room for fear of death when upon surrendering to Lord who conquers death, your ego dies. Ahammati means ego here. Alright. One of the fundamental and you may call it a foundational thought in Saddarshanam is to say that generally you and I imagine that our problems are because of external factors. Our sorrow is because of our family members or our boss or our team at work or our neighbors, or it is finance, it is health, we have a long list. Everybody thinks he or she is sad because of a particular issue. And in the science of self-inquiry, a clarification is made. We are told that, really speaking, a problem is a problem only when something in you supports it. Something in you gives reality to that problem. Something in you makes that external factor gather strength. In one of the verses, therefore, in Saddarshanam, Maharshi Ramana puts it in a very logical and concise manner. He says, Bhavehamas sarvamidam vibhati layehamo naiva vibhati kinchit tasmad aham rupamidam samastam tanmarganam sarvajayaya margaha. Let's go from the last line backwards. Tanmarganam sarvajayaya margaha, says the punch line, the fourth line. Marganam means searching. Marganam means going to the root of something. Marganam means to find out where did this come from? How did this come? How did this arise? That kind of query. Maharshi says, Tanmarganam sarvajayaya margaha. To inquire where this I, where this egoism, where this very entity that is suffering. When you and I say, I have no peace of mind, everything was going very well, then I married, one may say. Somebody else the other way around. Everything was well till my wife was around. Since she is gone, I am a sad man. Somebody else, something else. So we say, I am miserable. Now Maharshi says, can we inquire, what is this I? Who is this I? Because as the first line of the shloka says, Bhave ahamaha. Aham is ahankara. When this mentally conceived I, this of course is a bit advanced thought, half of you I am sure are familiar with, other half may wonder, what do we mean by rise of the I? There is always the I. At all time we have a sense of I. So where is any room, what is meant by questioning this I? So let me clarify, this I is not an absolute factor. For example, two people are rich. Both of them do not feel equally proud. One may be proud of his wealth, another may not be. See? Two people may be handsome. One may feel always conscious of it. I am the very most handsome guy here, most eligible bachelor in this colony. Another guy, though he is equally handsome, may not make an issue of it. Two people may have double PhDs. I can go on giving examples. Some of us, with what we have, make an issue of it, or with what we don't have, make an issue of it. We feel low or we feel high. We feel fortunate or we feel unfortunate. So, with this psychological process of our imagining ourselves to be higher or lower, the creation of a psychological I takes place. The whole self-inquiry, please note, is not about the absolute I, non-psychological I. In human life, all of us, very much including the speaker, carries a mind-made I, a thought-made I. And this thought is the result of various influences. Suppose somebody sings well, people appreciate. The person may feel a little big about himself. I sang and there were 50 people. They stood up and applauded. As though that is not enough, next day suppose his picture comes in the newspaper. And after a few days, everybody says, were you the one who sang that day? It was marvelous. Oh, it was great. Slowly the thought processes may make this person think that I am a special creation of God. All others are one category, I am higher. So, the society also contributes to the formation of either I am a special person or sometimes I am a hopeless person. Suppose I don't have as much money as my 4 other brothers, in some case, But I have enough to eat, enough to wear. I am actually able to take care of my family's needs. But my 4 brothers are all millionaires. They travel around the world. They have BMW and Mercedes and such things. Now, the mad society, as you and I call it, make me feel low. They won't spare me because it's a mad world. They will say, you may be able to, fulfill the needs of your little family. But look at your brothers and look at yourself. Then generally, 999 out of 1000 in our world, we yield, we succumb to that influence. We feel low and we feel sometimes angry with our own brothers. We curse the stars, we get angry with God and so on. Actually, to think of ourselves as not worthy, a failure in life, this is not what I want to be, etc., in this example is utterly questionable. Nobody is saying don't try for more wealth. You may try, you may get, you may also earn and buy a Mercedes. That is a different issue. But if you carry this idea that I am not as worthy as those 4 brothers, or in some other case, I am more worthy than these 4 sisters, whichever, high and low, both. To think of oneself as higher also is a form of ego in this subject, and to think of oneself as lower is also a form of ego. And the first line now again, bhave ahamaha sarvamidam vibhati. Sarvam means all these problems and a number of issues which bother us because we have this psychologically created sense of I. The real I is not an issue, an imagined I. And that imagination is very cleverly supported by the beliefs of the society, beliefs of myself. The beliefs make the ego, and then the ego carries its beliefs. So it's a vicious circle. Bhave ahamaha sarvamidam vibhati laye ahamaha. In deep sleep, Laya means when the I subsides, when the ahankara subsides. Naiva vibhati kinchit. There is no problem whatsoever. When we are fast asleep, which sometimes happens in a satsang also, all are happy. Once somebody asked me, Swami, thank you. In your class, I slept like I had never slept before. Why don't you come more often to our town? Or is there some alternative? I said, never mind. There are some books of mine, they are also equally effective. So till I come back to your town, use my books. So, Laya. Laya means the ego has not died, but like in deep sleep or like in some forgetfulness, like some moments of great pleasure. We ate an ice cream and how nice. For a moment the ego subsides. By ego we mean the thought I am worthless or the thought I am superior to everybody. Both these are facets of ego. Laye ahamaha, when that I am higher, I am worthy, I am a success, or what a failure I am. Everybody made it. I think my life has gone a waste now. Alas. There also there is an ego. These are not true actually. To think of ourselves as high or low is a spiritual error. But this error crops up. But in certain moments, sleep or ice cream or something else, the ego subsides. Naiva vibhati. Then there are no problems at all. No sorrow. Therefore, tasmad aham rupam idam samastam. Third line of that shloka. All your problems first appear to be anchored, rooted in external factors. First it appears that my sorrow is because of these four brothers. If they had not bought Mercedes and BMW, I would have been very happy today. They went, and if they had not gone to various countries abroad, if their wives were not to wear all these big, what do you call them, jewelry, I would have been much at peace. They are responsible. It first appears, but on scratching the surface, let them do anything. I am fine by myself. This is spiritual wisdom. Not to get lazy in that way, I have already clarified. We live an alert, sensible life, exerting the way we can, then rest of it we leave to God. That simplicity, alas, is lacking in the human mind generally. Okay, so if Maharshi says in the fourth line, Tan Marganam, therefore target that ego, target that ill-conceived I, target that I, ahankara, which is the result of judgmentalism, which is the result of heaping so many conclusions. Since I don't have much money, that is one way I am less worthy. And also I don't have good health. So another way I have reason to believe I am a failure. And as though that is not enough, nowadays nobody loves me, respects me. Like this, one after another, we heap up factors and the I is performed. So if Maharshi says, question it, because I don't have many people to come and ask for autograph and so on, does it make me unworthy? Because I have a regular good car and not Mercedes or BMW, does it make me unworthy? This is self-inquiry. Please do not imagine that this evening I am going to talk about some self-inquiry which is some out-of-the-way exercise. Really it is a simple common sense process. When your mind goes into some judgment, including in the so-called spiritual field, somebody sits for meditation and rather than meditation there is agitation. And the funniest part is, you ask him, why are you agitated? He says, I am agitated because my meditation is not going well. Because your meditation is not going well, you are agitated. But because you are agitated, there is no meditation. Which is first, chicken or egg? We don't know. Or some other times we sit for meditation and mind becomes calm. Immediately we say, this is the way to go. I think now I am very near the goal. I am going to get free. This is also a judgmentalism. If I look at my BMW and say, I made it. In life, I have made it. Whereas my four brothers failed. That is one judgmentalism. Another is this kind of spiritual domain, psychological domain. In one sentence, if I may sum up self-inquiry, it is to stand guard against every judgment your mind makes of yourself. Your mind is in a big way into judgmentalism. Judgment is needed. When you buy vegetables, you need to judge. That is called the functional field. In 1,000 matters, you need to judge. But there is a psychological field where the judgments are questionable. So please see the distinction. In order to cure yourself when you are unwell, you need to judge which hospital to go to, which doctor to go to. Very sensitive issues. You can't just go to any doctor and ask him give any medicine, no. But in the matter of this inner judgment, take for example, to make it simpler, if somebody thinks that I don't know Sanskrit and this life I won't get liberated, that is very questionable. People who know Sanskrit, namaste to them. Even when I chanted one or two Sanskrit shlokas, some of you might have felt very good. We must learn Sanskrit first from him. Then we'll come back to Saddarshanam later. So that is another conditioning. With due respect to Sanskrit, which I also love, to give it an undue importance is not right. To give it undue importance. If somebody knows Sanskrit, good. If somebody doesn't know, that is not a factor for a kind of judgmentalism that I am less holy. Sanskrit knowledge doesn't make you holier. Sanskrit knowledge helps you study certain works which define what is holiness. To make yourself holy, you just have to give up your egoism, not scholarship, right? Scholarship doesn't make you holy. So it is a bundle of judgments that creates the ego. So Maharshi Ramana, in spectacular ways, in the 40 verses on reality, brings out essential areas as well as secondary areas. But one remarkable feature of Saddarshanam is he hardly goes several notches below the top level, then one or two notches below, then again top level, he just stays on top. That is why, friends, Saddarshanam is not a very popular text, because it doesn't come down to the so-called simpler levels, or it doesn't give you some kind of literary enjoyment. It does give a little bit, not much. It doesn't have many metaphors, it doesn't have many idioms, it doesn't have many analogies, it doesn't have some kind of literary constructs which help you. It doesn't have parables and stories. See, in a lecture like this also, if a speaker were to tell you some story, some parable, narrate dramatically what happened somewhere, and you feel emotional, then you will return home saying, it was a terrific, wonderful lecture. We almost cried. You will believe that you got a lot of spirituality. It may not be spirituality. While the narration, a parable, a story might have a relevance. But please see, in a parable or in an illustrative story, when you get highly impacted, 90% of it could be the human side of it, some emotion. Somebody died and somebody was dying and the son was going to meet her, the mother, and on the way he fell down and he met with an accident, something like that. There's a human element. Oh really? Then did he reach his mother at all? Did he take the medicine to his mother? No. And so on. Now there is no spiritual awakening here, but it relates to your daily life and you identify with the story You say this is what actually happened in our home also, and such things. So, Saddarshanam doesn't have a whole lot of these elements or components of spiritual instruction. All of them have a place in so-called spiritual instruction. In a Hari Katha, in a Bhagavata Katha, in Ramayana, etc., there is a wonderful, sequence or the wonderful presentation alternately of some story and then some tattva, some katha and then some tattva. I have all the respect for Ramayana and Bhagavata and so on. They have a lot of tattva. They have self-inquiry also. But that self-inquiry is served along with the lot of these, stories. What then Sita said, what then Rama said, and what the Vashraman said, everybody. It goes up to the Dhobi also. So here you don't have those kinds of number of, I would call them in a philosophical, academic angle of view, they are the stories and jokes and metaphors and analogies and comparisons, etc., 5 notches, 7 notches, 10 notches below the highest plane. The highest plane, for that matter, is silence, because truth cannot be described at all in words. As the Upanishads themselves would say, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. Vachaha means speech and manas is mind. Both speech and mind try to reach the truth, but having failed, they return. That's what Taittiriya Upanishad says. But one notch below the highest, there could be subtle pointers to the nature of the state of no ego. What is the state of no ego? Let us go into one shloka of that kind in Saddarshanam. There is a shloka, Satya Stitihi Nahamudeti Yatra Tacchodayastana Gaveshanena Vinana Nashyed Yaditanna Nashyed Swatmaikya Rupa Kathamastu Nishta. The very first line touches on pretty much the highest plane. Or if you want to say silence is the highest plane, okay, one notch below. That is where words can go. Satya Stitihi, our true state. Because the state of being egoistic is a false state. Like a person who is drunk imagines something about himself. A drunk man may go on the street at night 1 a.m. and may shout, may say loudly, I am now the new head of the state. After elections, you know the results. I am going to take office, oath of office tomorrow. Okay, let everybody know it. I am going to be the CM. People say, he has taken fully. Just as that man, because of the influence of alcohol, saying that I am going to be the CM of whichever state and all that, is in the grip of falsehood. That is asatya. In this context of self-inquiry, self-knowledge, our ego is asatya. If you think that you are so miserable and fortunate, you are a failure in life, it is one asatya. If you think because you have some money or some name or fame or some political contacts, you are as though a special creation of God, others are, ordinary, that is another asatya. You are neither higher nor lower, you are neither sideways nor whatever. You are. I am is the truth. I am something, you are in trouble. That is asatya. So, satya stitihi, where there is alert silence with no formation of some particular description, especially as high and low. Maharshi himself says, satya stitihi is that where naha mudeti yatra. Yatra means where. Na aham udeti. Yatra aham means ahankaraha, na udeti. Udayam na karoti. Udaya is rising. If you and I could spend even 5 minutes during our day keeping aside completely any sense of being successful or a failure, being a victim or you know, or a, someone who has successfully put others down. These are the thoughts that come to us. I have been victimized. I believe a politician other day was crying, I am a victim. When the elections were out, they asked him, what is the nature of your victimization? Why do you say you have been victimized? The politician said, I have been victimized by correct counting. If there were to be no correct counting, I would have won the election. I am a victim of correct counting. Very interesting. So you and I feel, I am a victim of this, I am a victim of that. That is the rise of ego, sir. That is the rise of ego, madam. When we come to a conclusion, in the light of some event, in the light of some memory, in the light of some reference, all influences of the world. Suppose any of us are studying Saddarshanam, Upadeshasara, Ramayana, Bhagavata, Quran, Dhammapada, something we are so happy. In love of God, in thought of God, we are very happy. No ego. That is Satyasthiti. But next moment, Maya, we call it Maya, right? We put this holy book down and then think, in this whole colony, I am one of the 4 or 5 who study such books. But the sad part is nobody recognizes this. Nobody knows that I am reading this holy book every day. I have so much knowledge. And there is a temple here, or there is a mosque there, that church there. Nobody invites me. This is my sad state. Days are bad today. This is called aham udeti. God himself would look down and say, what happened to you? Just now you are so happy with my thought. Now you say nobody respects your love for me. So decide, you want people to respect you, people to buy your books, people to call you for talks, people to say you are the best Mahatma in recent times, or you want to be in love of me. God, you are to ask. Most of us in the grip of Maya would say, on odd dates, I would like to love you. On even dates, if society respects me and gives me some title, Bhakta Shiromani of our town, why not carry both together? We believe in balancing. All nonsense. Those who have clarity of vision say, let me remain in love of God, and who cares whether somebody recognizes her or not. Now, I made it a bit humorous, but actually, ahankaraha yatra na udeti means that only. Be yourself. Stay with good work, stay with good thought, stay with good action. And don't be hijacked by some judgment which society may make, or which society is inside you. You also have the same conditionings. You blame the society, they are all after money, and next day in another incident you are also after money. There is hardly any social conditioning from which you and I are free, because we have made the society. We have only subscribed to the society. But when it hurts us, we blame the society. And another time we only are hurting somebody by the same conditioning. Satya stiti nahamudeti yatra. Tatcha, that satya stiti, that true state, udayasthana gaveshanena vina, tat is ego here. Tatcha udayasthana gaveshana vina na nashyet. Tacchodayasthana gaveshanena vina na nashyet is a one sentence. Your ego would not go, Maharshi says, unless you do gaveshana. Gaveshana means inquiry. Gaveshana, margana, anveshana and vichara. All of them are synonyms in this context. Inquire. Next time any of us, have a judgmental thought in any context, question it, and questioning means you separate the grain from the chaff. Whatever is objective truth there should remain. Whatever is self-created. Suppose suddenly you find there is no milk in the fridge and family of 4 need coffee in an hour, need tea. And I have always been such a negligent person. I was in the town for all this time, I could have brought some milk. Oh, I have been such useless, I am not organized, nowadays I am absent-minded. These are all psychological. Then part of your mind says, leave it aside, but milk needs to be brought. That is objective. In the name of Atma Vichara, self-inquiry, don't say, the ego has risen. And as Chidananda said that day, to be without ego is the best. And don't go to the bed and cover yourself. Who will bring the milk? You go and get the milk. That is functional. But drive away judgmentalism, that you are disorganized, you are indisciplined, you are become lazy, now you are becoming absent-minded. Is it leading to some Alzheimer or something? All this noise is called psychological process. Inquire, question. Then you will find, oh yes, I was in town, I was in the mall, but forgot. Okay, I'll just make another trip and I'll go get milk. So by the time my family members are ready on a Sunday afternoon, let us say, they would not even know. I'll make coffee for all the 4 of them, including me, let's say. This is called doing what needs to be done without being swayed. I would say that is Gaveshana. If you inquire and identify, notice the judgments arising from Maya, from what you call social conditionings. Vinana nashya. Yadi tanna nashyet, if ego doesn't die, swatmaikya rupa katamastu nishta. The nishta, the abidance, marked by swatma aikya. One of the truths, one of the highest truths of this Siddhanta, this wisdom of self-knowledge is the Atma in all of us on the deepest level is one only. I added the expression on the deepest level. Unless someone has reached that deepest level, the Atma transmigrates one life to another. Like Shankaracharya in Bhaja Govindam would say, right? Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam, iha sansare bahudustare, kripaya apare pahi murare. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Or in Christianity, in Islam, in Judaism, etc., there is no rebirth, but there is a soul which moves on, maybe to heaven, maybe to hell. So there is this idea of a soul. You have your soul, I have my soul, she has her soul. That is one level. But in this wisdom of the Advaita Vedanta, they say, while that soul has its own validity, you go deeper, scratch the surface even more. Go deeper. Therefore I use that expression. On the deepest level, which very few people reach, on the deepest level, divisions break, barriers go away, and to the utter astonishment of the seeker, one finds that there is only one Shuddha Atma. So there was an interesting dialogue with Sri Maharshi. Somebody went and asked him, Maharshi, after enlightenment, does a person, lady or man, serve others? Does he serve others? And Maharshi's out-of-box answer was, after enlightenment there are no others. Lateral thinking. After enlightenment there are no others. Not all may understand it, but a little study of this subject will make it clear to anybody that the sense of others, say upon enlightenment, bodily you and I don't become one. But Today in my ignorance, I ask your name. Moment you say your name, my mind says, oh, he's a North Indian, I am a South Indian, he's an Iyer, I am an Iyengar, you know. So many ways we divide. Oh, she's a woman, I am a man. This is mischief of thought. Unless at airport or some place you need to go to washroom, you don't have to. Anywhere and everywhere you don't have to think, she is a woman, I am a man, or she is a man, I am a woman. But ego is such, in context sometimes and out of context 100 other times, the ego carries. If you have seen the movie Titanic, which I happened to see years ago, at the end there is a lifeboats come and everybody has to run for life. And the valiant, heroic captain of the ship helps everybody. He himself could have run away, but he says, as a great man, I would rather die, I would go after all go. So he makes a lot of people, there's one scene where he makes all the, class 3, class 4 or, those poor people, passengers, get into a lifeboat. There are a few more seats left. He says to some people up the deck or wherever, please come, there are some seats, get in, get in. And they are about to start. Then they look at who is sitting already. And it is all poor people in... You mean we have to sit with them? There is a humor there. There is a poignant humor, there is sad, painful humor. Even in that kind of life and death scenario, those people who probably belong to the royal class or some kind of elite, they said, Captain, can you not arrange another boat for us? In ordinary circumstances, it's understandable. I too don't dismiss totally. There are times, you have a business class ticket and Ramana Maharshi wouldn't say, even though you have a business class ticket, go sit there in economy. He wouldn't say. Life has lots of, differences, but then a sense of, what you call presence of mind. So, Maharshi Ramana, questions this formation of I. So we say this inquiry, psychological side of it. I'll take now two more verses, if not more than that, where I'll throw some light on how Maharshi has, in his own words, of course translated into Sanskrit by Ganapati Muni, has outlined the self-inquiry. Yes, there are two verses, primarily just one verse. He gives the analogy. Saddarshanam does have a few analogies, but not as much as many other works which are more popular. Here there is an analogy of some precious ornament has fallen into a well. The well is deep, a lot of water. And those who have, or the lady who has lost her necklace is in panic. So they get a diver. A diver is brought in. The diver then jumps into the well. And as he jumps into the well, he ties a stone to his waist so that quickly he can go to the bottom, go to the depth of the well and collect that lost ornament. And as he goes into the water, obviously he cannot talk. Also he cannot breathe. He is in water now. So holding his breath, not speaking a single word, with all attention on what is in front of him as he goes deeper and deeper, he looks for the lost jewel, collects it and comes back. Giving this analogy, Maharshi Ramana says, such is the case with your self-inquiry. Let me chant the shloka. Kupa means a well. Kupe yatha gada jale tathantar nimajya buddhya shitaya nitantam pranancha vachancha niyamya chinvan vinde nijaham kritimula rupam. First shloka. Maunena majjan manasa swamula charchaiva satyatma vicharanam syat eshohametanna mama swarupam iti prama satya vicharanangam. Kupe yatha gada jale. Gada jala with lot of water, deep water, there is a well. Just as into such a well, somebody would dive deep. Nimajya, going in, jumping into it. Nimajya and buddhya. Here in the theme proper, in analogy it is diving into a well. In the theme which we are illustrating, it is with a sharp mind, just as the diver has to be alert, we need to be very alert. While doing japa of Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, a kind of alertness is needed, but a lot of devotion is needed. But here, this is not a japa. It's not that you take a mala and say, who am I, who am I, who am I, mai kaun hu, vaise mai hu kaun, Not to do a japa of who am I. Rather, the self-inquiry requires, you may use the words or you may not use the words, but more than using words, in japa words are very important. If you have taken a mantra, you have to utter the mantra. Here, without uttering who am I, or you utter if you like, more importantly, you have to dive into yourself. Bring your attention to even the traces of I, traces of ego in yourself. Where to find those traces if you ask? They are always available. Swami Chinmayananda ji used to joke, you don't have to create problems, they are supplied freely to you. Challenges are supplied freely to you, you must know how to meet them. Likewise, how to find ego? We are always carrying the ego. In every regret, in every pride, in every sorrow, in every one of our emotional disturbances, there is the ego. The ego is the very core of that disturbance. So at any time we have, of course there are some times when mind is dull, then stay put. Then a worry will arise. When we meditate, can anybody claim here, when I meditate, no thought comes at all? For a while the mind may be dull. But if you stay put, something rises. I don't know, this meditation is not leading anywhere, but tomorrow one thing I am going to tell my boss for sure. So you think of the boss, you think of your boss who perhaps last week insulted you in a meeting, and then there is the ego now. The sense of I which was insulted. I was the one who insulted. I did maximum work, but the boss blamed me, while others who did not do much work were let go. Like that some thought arises. If you examine, this is one of the fundamental things you need to figure out in self-inquiry. In all your sorrows and worries, anxiety, etc., there is actually a self-judgment. There is actually a thought-created sense of who I am, which is false. Who am I inquiry is to question that false sense of who I am. Like that devotee in some colony, I said, he loves God, but in between he is thinking, nobody is appreciating my love of God. So if you slightly change the structure of the sentence, this man is saying, I love God, but I am somebody whom people are not appreciating. That is a self-description. That is the ego. That is psychologically created. That is not a biological need. If you have taken breakfast and 6 hours have passed and you feel hungry, the Maharshi won't say, find out who is hungry. Please don't think that he ever attacked biological issues. But if after 4 hours you felt hungry, a friend of yours also felt hungry, and then somebody came and served very delicious food. But you found that the other fellow got same amount of food but served on a larger plate. And you are worried. This is injustice. 2 rotis, this much of rice, sabji, dal, curd, all were equal, very carefully. But his plate was twice as much. And suppose you are bothered. Maharshi would definitely, that's psychological, Maharshi would definitely say, who is bothered about that bigger plate? Because there is no biological basis for it. If you are served only half as much as is needed for your appeasement of hunger, then that's a different issue. So now, Kupe yatha gada jale tatha, in that manner, nimajya buddhya shitaya, with a sharp and alert mind, watch the formation of I. The sorrowful I or the proud I, the jealous I or the regretting I, whichever I. Then, pranancha vachancha niyamya. Prana is breath. As you go more and more into self-inquiry, sometimes without even your knowing, your breathing slows down. Vachancha niyamya. Both expressed speech as well as the mental chatter reduces. You will not be talking loudly or even mentally. Otherwise, when we lack alertness, we are chattering. Mind is talking something or the other. Pranancha vachancha niyamya chinvan vindet nija ahankrati mula rupam. That is how you may find the mula, the source, which is pure without ego. Ahankrati is the ahankara, that is a false formation, but that arose from the pure I. And then he says, in this fashion, maunena majjan, if you and I can gather our energy, if you and I can waste our dissipation of energy in faltu things, as the Hindi goes here, useless things, then though we may be old, though we may be weak, though we may be having 100 other disadvantages, we have actually energy for self-inquiry. Energy for self-inquiry, nobody should imagine these young people can do, they have a lot of energy, I am getting old. No, on the contrary, this energy is not the energy to lift a big weight. It's not the energy that is required to run on an athletic field 4 rounds of 400 meters. That young people only can do. As we get older, we cannot. But the good news for all of us, especially the older ones here, is this is energy not in the muscles, physical muscles. It is the energy of inquiring, of questioning, of taking a dispassionate look. If you want me to make it very simple, suppose I move my hand and then say, I'm going to show you something. There is a 18-year-old young person, teenager, and then 80-year-old lady, 80. And after going 3 rounds, and then I just lift the hand and open my hand. Suppose there is a rose. There is a rose flower. Will the 18-year-old person see it with more ease, and the 80-year-old lady have difficulty? I'm finding it difficult to see this. I'm not, in my younger days I could have seen 10 roses at a time. Now at this age, to see a rose, no. Of course, unless she has some eye problem. Eye problem youngster also may have. That is different. That's a limitation of the example. Just as seeing a flower as a flower is of a different energy. It's not the physical energy. Likewise, however old you may be sick also, you may be in some adverse condition, but inside you, if there is a certain quietude, maunena majjan manasa swamula charcha eva satya vicharanam syat, that is the satya vicharana. What about scriptural study, where atma anatma vichara comes? Yeshaha aham, pure consciousness I am, as an example. Yetan na mama swarupam, with respect to body or mind, this is not me. Such discussions are in Vedantic books. Maharshi Ramana says, well, that kind of studying and thinking on what is me, what is not me, atma anatma viveka, yeshohametanna mama swarupam iti prama, such knowledge you may gather from scriptures can be satya vicharana angam, it can be a stepping stone. So study of scriptures, Viveka Chudamani or Atma Bodha and so on, can be a stepping stone, but at some point, rather than going in circles on scriptural language, terminologies, Maharshi's advice is, having gained a certain basic clarity on various definitions, put the book down and face yourself. Face the mischief that your mind is doing and question it. Then, of course, with the help of the stepping stone, you will be able to strike hard on false formations in the mind. Thus, in two shlokas, Maharshi Ramana gives the process. It is to be alert, it is to be on guard, it is to watch our own process of thinking. And in the process of thinking, invariably we will find that there are certain judgments. It is judgmentalism actually, which are questionable, which are baseless, the foundation of which is very false. It is just Maya at play. Mind alone is Maya at play, as they say. You will yourself see. To read a book and say mind is Maya and enjoy that sentence, yeah, you know how nicely it is said, mind is Maya, you know, that is only a beginning. You read a book and then go around and, you know, today I read something, mind alone is Maya, there is no other Maya. And when somebody says, you have said this so many times, don't bore me anymore, then you are very depressed for next 24 hours. That is Maya, isn't it? People are not appreciating, I am talking such high stuff and I went around giving him a golden message and he says, I am boring. Cheh, I don't want to live anymore in this town. Now you are in Maya and your mind is taking you on a trip of Maya. So Maharshi is so right. Scriptural studies give us lot of concepts, lot of ideas, and like I am doing now, it will empower us to give big lectures. But unless you, me or anybody spends some quiet time, not with a view to write an article or give a speech or some blah blah, let us face ourselves. When there is desire or anger, lust or jealousy, when there is something, let us clearly see what is biological here, what is psychological, what is rooted in truth, what is rooted in fancy, what is anchored in fact and what is anchored in fiction. In the thousands of thoughts that rise in us, there are these two areas. Some are rooted in fact and some are rooted in fiction, just belief, just fancy. Let me conclude saying spirituality is nothing but noticing the fancy, the fictional dimension of thought processes and doing away with them. Stay with facts, go get the milk. Don't label yourself as low or high, disorganized or efficient. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. If you stay with fact, let go of fiction, then that is the way to enlightenment. There is enlightenment right away. Lastly, I won't go to any other shloka. The verses of Sadarsham do touch upon a number of other things like sense of doership, the notion of what is true, what is false, the notion of how, rather not notion, they say how the world that we think is real is to a large extent what our mind makes of it. There are lots of insightful statements in these 40 verses, even discussion of how we get free from the bondage of karma, because the philosophy talks a lot about karma, prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, various forms of, we in our country say, this is all my karma. When will I be free from my karma? So, karma se mukti, that also is touched upon, all with a beautiful connection, a very visible connection to self-inquiry. Thus, it is a profound work with its own depth and yet its own simplicity as well as elegant expression. I have not studied the original Ulladu Napatu, but the Sanskrit rendering itself is so elegant. I can imagine how wonderful the original must have been. It is a treat to the philosopher in you, to the lover of language in you, But essentially, it is a great gift to the seeker in you, the inquirer in you, for getting clarity in this very, very critical spiritual practice of Atma Vichara. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Please do not hesitate to ask a question or two. Do we have a few minutes for if and don't think that your question could be silly. There is no silly question here. Any question, please do ask. Of course, not irrelevant questions like who do you think will be the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh? That has no bearing to our topic. But any question which has sort of even a distant connection to this topic, like human values, about anger, about depression. Yes, I
So
wonder.
the path to spirituality, to finding ourselves, is it only through the material world today, in today's context, or is it through renunciation in terms of...
Krishna says, is the path of spirituality or path to spirituality through the material world, wherever we are with our duties and responsibilities, or should we go for renunciation? In fact, there is only one path, and that is called being true to yourself. You should look into your heart. If you feel honestly that the so-called materialistic or family or job and these things that you are holding on to is unnecessary. You think that I am holding on to this because of some foolishness. If you truly believe, I am holding on to this job, I don't need this job actually, but to impress somebody. Because some of us do that sometimes. Sometimes we are in some position, not because we need it, nor even because we love it, but we want to send a message who I am, Then you would renounce if you listen to that true voice. But many a time, that's where your inner voice matters. You are holding on to some position, some responsibility, because deep in your heart you feel that you owe that. I know one Swami in some place, for many years he is keeping his mother with himself. And everybody knows in an educational campus, everybody knows that once the mother goes, he will not be in that campus at all. He is in the campus because he has a love of his mother, and the campus has many facilities. The mother feels good, there is a mess, there is food, there are some gardeners, servants. If he leaves his mother and goes to Himalayas, he will be okay. He is still not very old, but the old mother will be. So his inner voice says, no matter how much I adore Ramakrishna or Ramana, how much I adore Himalayas or this or that, till my mother is alive, I will be here. He also does some work in the campus, and I will carry on my work. As a result, my mother gets this facility. So for him, that is the best. For somebody else, where one's inner voice says, it's not easy, one has to check for a length of time because our mind gets into various fancies. Over a length of time, if you are convinced that you are holding on to some materialistic and family positions purely for some kind of fancy, then you leave. But if there is some genuine purpose served by it, let 100 people go to Himalayas, you just stay where you are. For right in that seva-oriented living, there is renunciation. Your renunciation may be better than those who go to Himalayas. Because what is true renunciation is the giving up of selfishness. Therefore, the external going away or staying at home, external wearing some orange clothes or staying in pant and shirt, that has very limited significance. It has a place, but main thing is whether in pant and shirt or say sari or salwar kameez or some orange robes, where are you in terms of letting go of some selfish urges? Many a time, when somebody has hurt us, we roll up our sleeves A part of our mind says, but you have been studying Gita these days, you cannot take revenge. Then mind says, one last time I will take revenge and then this is one last time. So that means we are not free. Yes, here.
Swamiji, I had two questions. The first question is about regarding meditation. Like when situations around me are very peaceful, conducive, my meditation experience will be very, it feels very good. Like right now, I am in not in a so conducive situation. Like exam stress is there, everything is everything around me is in the rat race. Now, if I sit into meditation, I will feel agitation and thought of like running away from it. So, what could be the solution for it? Like I don't feel like doing meditation at that point of time, but people advise you need to do at that point of time. And second question is that it's regarding career goal. For let's say I'm fixing, I want to become so and so by this date. So this has one advantage. The advantage is that I will be like running behind the schedules to meet that goal. But there is a disadvantage behind it. That is, there is a fear. Always you'll be constantly under stress and fear. But people say like you need to be equanimous. You need to take like success or failure in that same note. But if I don't get attached with that goal, the advantage is that I'll be like stress free. I'll be working normally. But disadvantage of it is like I'll be kind of complacent regarding my goal. So I am always confused like how to balance these two things.
The first question is when there are conducive places, peaceful environment, you meditate better. In disturbing places, you don't feel like meditating. Therefore, there is very simple common sense. To the extent possible, organize yourself to meditate in calm places. For example, from your from your office work, you come home. Suppose on the way there is a peaceful place. Meditate there for 15-20 minutes. Maybe when you come home, it's not very peaceful. Family members, others are there. Or every day, if it's not possible, as Sri Ramakrishna used to advise householders, once a week during the weekend or so, go to some solitary place, go to some peaceful place and meditate. Therefore, you need to, as Western management gurus like Stephen Covey advise, on a weekly basis you need to plan your meditation, exercise. There are many people who can't do exercise daily. So they do, weekend 1.5 hours twice, Saturday and Sunday, they do enough of workout. Today science says that is also good. Exercise, meditation, spiritual study. So all these, you talked of conducive atmosphere, I am talking of time management. So whether it is place management or time management, things are not as we desire. So we have to adjust with available places. So do it on that kind of weekly schedule. And if you find a good place, try to go there and meditate an hour. Or if you say hour, I get sleepy. Meditate 20 minutes, then take a little walk, another round of 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So your weekly dose, as they say. Second thing is this goal setting and in career. Once we set a goal and we say, I want to achieve this, it causes stress. And if I don't set a goal, you rightly say that you become complacent or lazy or some kind of lack of energy and so on. You may even get distracted to undesirable things. Therefore, you need to set goals, but never go insensitive to your duties. So make a list of what your duties are. Duties to others as well as duty to yourself. And having become clear about what you owe to your immediate near and dear ones and to yourself. Yourself meaning some right sleep, right food, that cannot be neglected. With those parameters well defined, then set the goal. The fact that you have set these parameters into the picture will ensure that you will not go berserk. Your stress levels also will be less. For example, to just complete it with one example, if you ensure that you sleep 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours every night on an average, your stress levels will come down. Today lots of people sleep so less in the name of, there are some people who achieve a lot but suddenly at the age of 42 or 53 they get tough heart attack, they die. They achieved setting the goal, but they did not give enough sleep to themselves. Whether it is laukika, worldly matter, or even spiritual practices, none of us can do the big mistake of denying to ourselves the minimum sleep. Sleep and food, right food and exercise. It is a proven science that if you don't do exercise, you will pay for it. Nobody should imagine I am different. Nobody is different. Did you have a question, sir?
On this student and after that, you were saying that how to identify the false ego. But you never mentioned how to identify the real I. So what is left is real I?
Yes, that's true. When you identify or recognize what is false I and inquire, question or intensely see, like in Lord Shiva's example, he just saw intensely with the third eye, Madan, and Madan was turned to ashes. That's one powerful metaphor for self-inquiry. If we intensely see lust cannot stay there. If we intensely see jealousy, intensely or in its entirety, then jealousy cannot stay. That is a Siddhanta. So, intensely you see the ego goes away. What remains is the pure I, but I added one dimension. The pure I in the Vedanta literature is Chidananda Brahma and so on. Actually the pure I, okay, Chidananda Brahma, no denial, but it does include the functional I. Functional I means if you are father of your daughter, you will remain father of your daughter with all spiritual wisdom. When the Buddha returned after his tapas and Yashodhara and Rahul came, he did not say, you are no more my, you never were my wife, I don't know who you are, etc. He looked at, yes, Yashodhara, how are you? Yes, Rahul. So that is functional. A hill will remain a hill, a river will remain a river in your eyes in spite of this radical transformation. Leave the hill and river aside. About yourself also, you will remain the son of your father. That idea will be there. And your height, your weight, and if you loved tea and if you loved Doklas, you will love Doklas later on also. But the psychological side of it is judgmentalism. I have great taste, I always buy branded things only. I never go for ordinary things. That some pride suppose you had. In enlightenment that pride will go. You may still love some branded things, but you know that that's an old habit. Certain tendencies of you will, we say this way, they stay lightly in your consciousness. Swami Chidananda, for example, a great saint from whom many of us learn, he liked some very, very fancy things. He would have some gold ring, or he used to take snuff also in a silver box. And the way he took it, and Arjuna and something, his stunt and all was there. But we have all the reason to believe that is just, certain ways, certain mannerisms. In the light of his spiritual attainment, all of them were sitting lightly. He was able to next moment forget it. Whereas an egoistic man, if someone does such things, would be so full of that. There's a big difference. So, to conclude the answer, when the false I is negated, as the philosophy says, you are just consciousness, Sat and Chit, but to make it practically clearer, your functional identity very much remains. Functionally, practically, vyavahar mein. Vyavahar mein you are an accountant, let us say, you will be an accountant. You may leave the job, but certain description. Your mother tongue, let us say, is Punjabi, that will not change. I am a Punjabi speaking man, you will say then also, with the ego dead. Somebody else had a question? Yes, this lady.
You said that we ourselves give reality to, we support our problems and therefore we give reality to it. But then there are some problems. I mean, so there are some. How do we know this is a genuine problem, and or am I giving it? I'm supporting it and making it real.
Right.
So we should be able to.
True, true. That itself is inquiry. So watching it dispassionately, looking at it without bias, and if needed, consulting some people, consulting a good friend. And that is an ongoing process. All life is learning. So sometimes when you consult somebody, he or she will show you a dimension which you yourself did not see. You might have you might be going about something, looking at it as your duty. A good friend of yours says very lovingly and caringly, please, bura mat mano, aisa karke, don't mistake me. This is not your duty. You just are going about it with some false prestige. You are trying to show to everybody how smart you are. First it will hurt you, but then you will say, my close friend is saying this. Is there some truth in it? Then sit at that time itself, or whenever you get some free time. All these days I was doing this thinking I am doing my duty, but my very good friend says I am operating out of false prestige. Kya sach hai? Is she saying the truth or am I right? Inquire. She may be false. Your closest friend may not judge the situation properly. So that's inquiry. Inquiry means with available information from within you, from others, from a book, from a movie, from this or that, you subject the matter to investigation. That is the best we can do. We may not succeed immediately. We may once more make a big mistake. But if that flame of inquiry is kept burning, at the right time things fall off. Whereas most people in the world, either because they are not exposed to these satsangs and so on, as though that is not enough, they have been fed more and more of worldly tendencies. And their conscience pricks them that this is a corrupt practice, I should not be doing. And the world has friends. Arey, sab log kar rahe hain. Everybody is taking. You just go ahead, grab that money, grab that power. The world that is the wrong influence. The right influence makes us question. And then we find that many a time there is absolutely no need for us to tell a lie. Absolutely no need for us to grab something which somebody else perhaps needs more. Then certain renunciation. So it is an ongoing process. There is no single three-step way which can be done in 2-hour setting, or 2-hour sitting rather. In a 2-hour sitting, do step 1, step 2, step 3, you can sort out. Because that's why someone like J. Krishnamurti calls it awakening of intelligence. This intelligence, this ability to see things properly, awakens in us, and it's difficult to describe it in terms of it's not a physical process. A physical process, a biological process, a woman conceives and how in 9 months the embryo grows and then there is a delivery. That has been charted out pretty much with a little difference of, sometimes a little early, sometimes a little late. But pretty much the growth of an embryo has been defined. But here, the psychological domain, there is a biological domain, there is the physical domain outside, a revolver, you pull the trigger and how the bullet goes. Physics defines how it goes, its trajectory, all that. There is a lot of science about it. That is physical, there is no life there. It is inert. A bullet is inert, this revolver is inert. You pull the trigger, it goes. The embryo growing is biological. But now deeper one is the psychological. It's a vast field. Because you inquire, I inquire, he inquires. But we three carry huge baggage of our life's experiences. The baggage of my hurt, my pride, my shame, my regrets, my anger, rooted in all my memories, is different from his baggage, from your baggage. Therefore it cannot be so defined. We can only give a broad outline of this is the way. Ask yourself, consult people, read something, pray. Bhakti can become, sometimes when you feel I can't, this is too complex, sit down and pray God. chant some mantra, pray God, God show me the way. Then something happens. People have testified to it. We'll take two more questions and conclude for tonight. Nimish wanted to say something?
You mentioned about being alert
Yeah.
during your talk. So I wanted to ask, how do I know when I am alert? Or if not, my mind is not playing some trick.
Sometimes you would not know, but many times you would know that your mind is playing a trick, or mind is taking you for a ride, when you find that the thought has a smell. Your thought has a distinct smell of some fancy. Like I am reading newspaper and suppose I see that somebody entered Bollywood at the age of 60 and already he is performing so well. Then my mind says, I am also 60. Is it not too late? This guy could do, maybe I could also do. And moreover, that article says that person was not all that good looking and was into some other career, and then when he was into Vedanta, and now he has gone into Bollywood. Then I say, it matches with mine. Why not? Then I say, wait a minute, hold on. First of all, is there a need for me? My mind says, see, don't ask such questions, plunge. See, I am giving a humorous example, but there is distinct smell of fancy trip. This is fancy. So, you got to know. All we can say is, when you know, you know. There is no meter, there is no instrument, there is no, litmus test or something. You apply it to your head here and then it turns red. That was a fanciful thought. If it turns green, it was a factual thought. But the good news for you is, I don't want to discourage you, the good news is the Vedanta or the science of self-inquiry of the various mystics says it uncompromisingly that every one of us deep inside is actually intelligence. Even those who failed in third standard, even those who could not learn basic maths or English, physics or chemistry, they have in them this intelligence to distinguish between what is a fancy trip and what is a true voice. You recognize. Therefore, you see, among saints, many were they are not educated at all. Many did not travel around the world. Saints and sages, they did not need academic qualification or all those fancy things. Likewise, you and I also have that intelligence. That intelligence has to be awakened. So just see, you will get that smell. Just practice. That intention to see is important. If you examine, you will find out. Yeah. Last question for the night.
Swamiji, there is a very interesting incident in Bhagwan's life that I'll share, which to some extent relates to the type of question she asked. Apparently, in the ashram, one of the people who was working in the ashram came to Swamiji, Bhagwan, and said, Swami, I have lost my eldest son, and she was crying like anything. Please tell me what to do. Then Bhagwan, in his usual fashion, said, please ask yourself the question, who is this that has lost her son? Then he told her that all this loss of son and all that is all mere illusion. And it's not the real you, it is the functional I that you are looking at. Then after she left, somebody asked, that's a very unkind thing you did, Swamiji. I mean, she just wanted some solace. And Swamiji said, when do you give strong medicine? Only when there is high fever. She was having high fever and I thought it's an opportune moment to give her strong medicine. In a way, he was quite uncompromising in telling his disciples, if you are serious about self-inquiry, it is not a switch on, switch off. You have to do it for every situation.